thinkers. One of my favorite movie scenes of all time is from The Jerk with Steve Martin when he shouts, "The new phone books are here. The new phone books are here," in front of a dumbfounded Jackie Mason. His exhilaration about something so mundane spoke to my inner child and the enthusiasm I could muster for the arrival of a new object, whatever it might be. And it's funny, even today, this still happens. We have a system in our building in New York City that alerts us via email when a new package arrives. And even though this happens a lot more frequently, thanks to the pandemic driven online shopping, I still drop everything I'm doing and go retrieve the package. I can't help myself. Maybe it's a boutique gin to be featured on my live streaming show, or maybe it's a surprise gift. It could happen. Something unexpected to brighten my day, which leads us to our guest today, Dan Frohnen, CMO of Sendoso, a company that literally packages moments of delight for marketers. Dan is a veteran of the startup world, having driven marketing at Scadulo, Aptus, and Relevate, among others. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love that intro story. I get equally as excited.
I wondered about that because it's funny. It's like we're getting packages every day now, but it's like, oh, gee, I wonder what that could be.
Yes.
Isn't that funny? So first of all, how are you?
Doing phenomenal. It's a Friday morning while we're recording this, and looking forward to the weekend and just happy about life in general.
Yeah, I love recording shows on Friday because there is that sort of we're going to be able to breathe and so forth. So anyway, also because we're all virtual, where are you?
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, cool. So let's go back. You started in August of 2019 at Sendoso. What was your mandate at that point in time?
Yeah, when I first joined Sendoso, the mandate was create a scalable marketing program. And the history of it was that they were doing a lot of cool things, right? It was a lot of brand activation. It was a lot of senior logo in all the cool places, tons of events. And it was, they were seeing really good growth and success and product market fit, and they needed to bring someone in who could do that at scale in an efficient way that, it delivered more ROI and could scale the business.
So it sounds like, and I know you're being gentle here, but it sounds like they were doing a lot of things, but there wasn't exactly, say, a sophisticated demand generation engine or a tech stack that could really support and help drive pipeline. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yeah, exactly. It was, probably basic CRM plus marketing automation tool, and about as basic of a database marketing strategy as you can get.
So, okay, so we've got that as a mandate. And so let's just talk about, so between August and let's just say February, what was your focus? What were the kinds of things that you were doing?
Yeah, I'd say it was three main things. The one thing was putting in the proper, target account framework. So making sure that between marketing, SDRs, AEs, and then the CX team, that we just had a combined view of what our TAM was and how to operate within it. The second was like, let's go out and do a big program together on the go-to-market side so that we can see, how can we coordinate our efforts and go do big things together. And then the third was hire the team, because the Sendoso marketing team was a mighty team of four, punching way above their weight class, and they needed product marketing, they needed some proper demand gen, they needed some customer lifecycle marketing, so building out that team as well.
Okay, so just in case my dad is listening, as he does on occasion, I want to make sure. So SDRs are sales development reps. CX stands for customer experience.
Yep.
TAM, what is TAM?
Total addressable market.
Total addressable market. Okay, thank you for that. And then we have the go-to-market, as in we've got to figure out who we're targeting and what's our messaging. And a lot of folks from Silicon Valley talk about plays and things, and what's your play against a particular target. Okay, and then lastly, you talked about hiring the team. Let's talk about that. What were some of the areas that so where are you now? How many people do you have on your team?
We're about 17 people, and that's spread through product marketing, demand gen, content, brand and buzz, and then customer lifecycle and SDR.
Okay, so you've hired 13 people
Yep.
since you started. One of the things I hear a lot from CMOs is the difficulty of hiring product marketing people
Yeah.
because they have to sort of be in this sort of between the engineer. A lot of them are ex-engineers and understand how the product works, but then they need to be able to translate that. Was that a challenge for you to find that spot?
It was definitely a challenge because we had never had product marketing. It was always run through our brand and buzz team. And we had there was a product marketing deficit there for some basic stuff and like a release framework. And I got lucky because the person that we hired first, she actually emailed me and just said, like, if you don't hire me, you're an idiot. And here's why. And she was based in Arizona, which is where we have one of our offices, but I was hiring in the Bay Area. And I mean, her ability to just get in front of me, like, got her the job. And she was really the person who got it up and running for me, which
That's
is
hilarious. I love that sort of, I'm coming at you and I'm the right person and you just got to see it. And it turned out she was. Uh, so, and what exactly does the brand marketing team, the product marketing team do?
Yeah, so it's quite a bit because our product is complex because you think about the fact that there's warehouse logistics, there's multiple different ways to send, and then SaaS and integration. So they're really responsible for, three main things. One is market insights, working with the product team to make sure that like we're road mapping and keeping up with what our customers need with where the market's going. Second is release marketing. So, as we're building out that product team and the capabilities on the product, how do we release that and have as big of an impact as possible? And then the third is just straight up internal enablement around everything from competitive to win-loss to enablement around how we're talking in the market, all the basic stuff like first call decks, customer stories.
Right. Okay. And enablement, as in sales enablement, helping your
Yep.
sales guys getting to the close, taking that lead and then turning it into revenue.
Yeah, and I'd say one more thing, CX enablement. I think the more we're in this world where the pandemic's hit, it's customers matter more than new business. So a lot of focus has been on, like, don't take your customers for granted and make sure that you're enabling the people that are working with them as well.
Yeah, and boy, did that become an issue, an important focus once we got to March and April. But before we get there, I'm thinking you mentioned that you have a brand and buzz team, and I first of all, I love that name, but it's not one that I hear all the time. Talk a little bit about what that team looks like and what their mandate is.
Yeah, so early on when I came in, I just saw that we had a lot of people that talked about us through social. Our G2 crowd page was buzzing, and we had a big kind of share of voice of like the categories on there. And then I quickly realized that content, social, SEO, and just all of the stuff that PR, of course, really manifests itself into a team that's just responsible for our brand, our look and feel, translating that out to what our messaging feels like, partnering with our product marketing team on, what a release feels like and how that goes into our overall company narrative, and really having this content machine that's actually highly in tune with our customers and our prospects, so that we're really a brand that's educating and being highly relevant to our audiences as we're on this journey together. We very much view this as a journey, and us as a way to help businesses be better, and that happens through like content.
And so I want to. It's funny, we've in the CMO huddles, which you got to experience, we've had a lot of conversations about the challenge that CMOs have, even talking about brand as a budget line item. And
Yeah.
often they'll use, we came up with, I think, 11 different euphemisms for what is the brand budget. Nobody wants to call it that. There's corporate, there's, and I'm wondering, you actually have this team called Brand and Buzz. How do you, first of all, budget for that because like every company, particularly a Silicon Valley company like yours with funding, it's all about ARR and driving revenue, and brand is this sort of weird sort of intangible thing. How do you deal with that aspect of it from a budgeting standpoint and sort of a management up standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's two different considerations I have. One is the category creation story, right? So we are creating a category. It's the sending platform category, and part of creating a sending platform category is having a PR share of voice. It's having a competitive SERP that is outperforming the rest of the market, and content is a massive driver to both of those. And then you measure that and you report it to the board and you say that this matters and it needs to be up and to the right. And then the second piece here is with brand and buzz is brand is not mutually exclusive to demand, right? So if my brand strategy is content, that content should also be driving SEO, and that team is actually responsible for the content production that demand is working with them on the SEO side. So we see the gain in SEO web traffic, we see that convert to pipeline, and we see it convert to revenue. So it's like it's actually driving on both sides.
Well, and I know that, and you know that, but I'm wondering from a budget standpoint, does that mean that you can then put some content into your quote demand budget that you are, do you have to itemize and show brand and buzz is a budget line item, or do you have sort of the move beyond that and just, I have a budget?
Yeah, I mean, I have a budget, but I also have to show like pipeline return on investment for sure. And I take a percentage of that team and the contractors and the agencies that we work with, and I put it into demand for
Okay,
sure.
got it.
I think it's the right thing to do, because at the end of the day, the COO, the CFO really just wants to know you're investing dollars. How are you getting these back out? And I want to tell a real story.
Yeah, as Latney Conant put it from Sixth Sense put it, I think when we were on the show, she said there is no demand without brand. So I love that. I believe that firmly, and we are selling that on this show. Anyway, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Hey, it's Drew, and I just wanted to do a quick mention of a new peer-to-peer advisory network I started last year called CMO Huddles. Every week, we bring together an elite group of CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. One CMO described Huddles as a cross between an executive workshop and a therapy session. If you're a B2B CMO and wish you could meet regularly with your smartest peers, just go to cmohuddles.com and book a time to talk to me to see if you'd be a good fit. Check it out at cmohuddles.com. Okay, we're back. And Dan, one of the things I realized is we probably should let people know who haven't heard of Sendoso, although I have, the buzz among CMOs is you're there. I mean, you came up in huddles all the time early on in April, May, and June. It's like, how are we going to do this? But tell, what is the shipping platform that you provide, or package platform?
Yeah. So, I mean, the central premise with Sendoso is that we help brands rise above the digital noise. And in essence, our sending platform allows marketers, sellers, SDRs, CSMs, HR teams even do direct mail, gifting, digital experiences at scale. With our sending platform, you can connect into CRM, any of the systems of action that you're in, whether that's sales engagement platform or even your Gmail. And then we help you warehouse, store, ship, source anything and everything that you're trying to ship.
I love it. Okay. And let's get now to March 2021, 20, where, you had built up your marketing engine, your demand gen engine, you had hired your team, you had all these events, and suddenly the world shuts down. Do you remember the sort of moment? I mean, I remember sort of around March 7th, it was just like, oh gosh, what is going to happen? Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I remember being in Scottsdale for B2B MX and kind of feeling weird because we knew that this pandemic was happening, but we were in this really crowded room, but hadn't really hit all of us yet. And then I remember getting home and I was actually really sick. And I was like, do I have this pandemic? Which I luckily didn't. But then for us, that moment was when the NBA shut down. And then we went like, okay, this is a big deal, because a big franchise like that, that's putting like that much emphasis on like money doesn't matter here anymore, really kind of just shook the world a little bit. And that's when we took notice. And then, yeah, as you said, everything changed.
So there's this moment where all of us looked at our businesses and without a clue really how this was going to impact things. It was just, there's a moment of blindness that any crisis like this sort of creates. I'm wondering for you in March and April. First, let me step back. I am assuming that events were a big part of your marketing strategy. You've mentioned them already, but I know that marketers love to go to events. It's a great place to showcase what you do. How big a percentage of your lead gen and budget came from events prior to the pandemic?
It was 40% of our program spend. And we viewed it very much as it influences deals, and it also has a net new impact in the immediate term, as well as like the back half of the year, because it takes a while for those relationships to build. So it was a big loss.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned the influence deals, because a lot of folks think about events really as as mainly a place of generating new leads. But the truth is they're really good for when you have a customer who's close. Yep. And they want to talk to other customers, then they can sort of casually mix. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges in the virtual world, to sort of replicate that. And because it was relatively easy, at least early on, to get prospects in for some kind of an event, but getting ones that were all really close to close was a sort of difficult challenge. So, all right. So suddenly you don't have events and you're trying to get money back, and you don't, because you had commitments. What were some of the actions that you took in order to sort of go, okay, 40% of our spend, yikes, a big part of our leads? What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. I mean, as any marketing team, I remember our head of field marketing was talking to our head of content and said, "Oh my God, all of our events got canceled. Now what?" And the head of content said, "We write a blog about it." And it was, and that was really the birth of our approach of educating, which that blog turned into, "Oh my God, all my events got canceled. Here's 10 things that we're doing instead." And we took the stance of, we sell to sales and marketing, and we are a marketing and sales organization that's trying to figure this out. So let's take our customers and prospects on this journey with us and figure it out together.
It's such an inspired thing. I hope you gave a virtual hug to your content person. That was not the reaction that a lot of companies had. But the notion of, okay, 10 things we're going to do now. Do you remember any of those things that were on the list?
Yeah, I mean, it was everything from, more virtual, like one to few sort of events. It was obviously more direct mail and gifting, because it was really leaning in and being like hyper relevant, and asking your audiences how they're doing, those sorts of things.
Yeah. Okay. So from your business standpoint, how were March and April?
Yeah, I mean, March was the end of our quarter, and it came in a little soft, but not like to the point where the sky was falling. And then April, we have a really pragmatic board of directors and exec team, and we just said, you know what, this is a global pandemic. No one's ever seen anything like this. Let's have 3 scenarios on what this could be, and let's monitor this business hard, and let's be prepared for all of the scenarios. And what we really saw was, in the month of April, our pipeline basically froze into an iceberg. A lot of our prospects and even customers were like, we don't know how this is going to impact us. We've got to wait and see. My CFO's either telling me to prepare for cuts or don't spend a dime. And we just monitored it. We talked to our prospects. We learned as much as we could. I went out and interviewed like 10 CFOs to learn about new buying behaviors myself. And then in mid-May, we started to see the thaw, and then it picked back up. But it was touch and go for about 6 weeks for sure.
Yeah. And a couple of things I want to just acknowledge there. One, I talked about this a lot on my show. The CF no suddenly emerged. And it's like if you weren't considered an essential purchase, you did not get a PO.
Yep.
And it didn't matter what it was that you were trying to sell. And essential was, of course, keep our business operational, move us to the cloud, all of those kinds of things. And everybody else was sort of on hold. I also want to just acknowledge that you going and interviewing 12 CFOs, because those weren't necessarily your primary, those weren't the folks that got you in the door,
Yep.
but that was an inspired decision because those are the people that you were going to have to persuade
Yep.
when, and so what did you learn? Do you remember what you learned from those CFOs?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing was ROI, ROI, ROI. Like, tell me why this is a must-have purchase right now, and show me that there will be an acceptable payback period, and that we will be making more money by having purchased you than not. And that put me into action. It's like, okay, I got to go and redo some customer case studies. I've got to punch up our messaging and really get into that. And it was, I always liked the silver lining, and that was one of the best things that could have kind of shocked our brand a little bit, like up level that story.
And boy, that really summed things up nicely in that one of the things, so after we got past essential and there was a little bit of a thaw, the big deal was speed to value. How quickly so CFO would say, okay, if you can get me an ROI in 3 months, I'll think about that. That's decent. If it's a 12-month ROI, you know what? Call me in 6.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so that speed to value, and again, that how do you turn your product into something that is must have? And to me, that's a great litmus test for any marketer at any time, but
Yep.
we just didn't have to have that in pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So so as you were learning these things, so you did some new case histories, what other things did you start to do to sort of build back your pipeline and start to close deals?
Yeah, I mean, we really started to train our entire internal teams, from SDR to marketing to sales and CS, on what our messaging was and what our educational kind of value prop was. And it was really teaching people, like, how do you connect and maintain these relationships in this work from home world, and spend a ton of time with our SDR org, because the thing, we always take SDRs for granted, that smile and dial and get me those meetings, but they were talking to people that were going through some heavy duty times, right? And really teaching them how to have empathetic conversations, how to truly ask how you're doing, how to truly find out the psychology there before you jump into some like tirade about how we can help you, went a long way. And the other thing is just brand activation. Like, we went and partnered with like-minded companies where we have a great better together story through technology, and went out and educated the market at scale. It wasn't just about us. It was about the Six Senses of the world, the Terminuses of the world, the Outreaches, the Sales Lofts, and bring our stories together and help through technology, through creativity, and through being authentic about being helpful.
I want to come back to the partnership thing, but before then, I'm going to sort of put a punctuation point on the empathy. It's funny, and I don't want anybody to misinterpret this conversation, because we've talked about so far making your business essential, turning it into a must-have, and being able to show the ROI. And that might make you think that this is simply rational. But the key thing that you mentioned was training your SDRs to be empathetic. Why? Because we're still doing business human to human. And if you don't acknowledge the human on the other end of your Zoom call, you're going to not be able to connect. You're not going to be able to persuade. So I think reminding folks of that, and I'm pretty sure early on, I talked about the day of the all business all the time executive is over. And I think in many ways, if there's a good thing that came out of the pandemic, it is that we sort of all, as leaders, realized how are you is a really important question, right? And it's just so, in some ways, even though we're separated by Zoom and these virtual things, it did force us to sort of think about it, at least being closer. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about partnerships and why I think that's such a important thing for folks in the software world to be thinking about. Okay, stay with us. Okay, we're back. And Dan and I were just talking about partnerships and how that is such a powerful way to extend the brand. And one of the things to be thinking about with that is this a brand that might have more awareness than you have, or might have penetration that you don't have? And when you're bundled, that gives your brand a lot of credibility. Talk about how you were able to develop those relationships with the Terminuses and Six Senses and so forth.
Yeah. So, I mean, we naturally had relationships prior to COVID, right? There, a lot of those companies either do their own industry conferences or we see each other at bigger conferences. A lot of us are customers of each other. So we have those existing relationships. But, one of the premises that we had was, as we're out going and educating the market on how you can move forward and be the best sales, marketing, CX team that you can possibly be, it's about that customer journey, right? And it's about connecting your technology and the experiences and going out and telling that story. And that's where partners comes in a big way with us, because yes, you can use a sending platform by itself, but if you're a company that's leveraging technology to automate and have next level experiences, the coordination there is critical. And that's where these partnerships come in, is telling that story and then using our collective brands to get that out in a big way, so that we're just, rising this entire conversation through our collective audiences.
So with the partnerships, I'm curious, did that result in, did you do sort of, did you have go-to-market strategies in combination with them? And how did that, was there anything interesting that you did with one of those partners?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple things. One, Sixth Sense. I mean, we talked about Latany a little while ago. We've done a couple virtual wine tastings / account-based everything talks, where we get 20 VPs of marketing, CMOs together, sip some wine. Latany is super fun in a wine tasting, and talk about business and have fun doing it, right? And that goes a long way with this audience during these times. Educate and have fun. And then the other thing has actually been just our own branded events. We've brought in 20 plus partners together multiple times now to just have a half day of thought leadership around different topics, whether that's being connected, whether that's thinking outside of the box and everything that you're doing, or our first one, which was like the show must go on. Like, how are you going to get to move forward? And it starts with kind of closing out the past chapter and moving on, right?
And all of those are great, fun events. And I'm imagining that it wasn't just a wine tasting, that Sixth Sense would use Sendoso to package and ship the wine.
Yep. So we leverage each other's technology too, right? Like we use Sixth Sense to target who we wanted to invite in the first place, and then we leverage the Sendoso platform to get wine tasting kits and the virtual sommelier teed up. And then a couple customers that use both of us, right? So you have this combined Sixth Sense Sendoso experience plus customers plus 2 CMOs from both brands. So you're just immersed in it.
And I think that's one of the ways that this, in a number of conversations that I've had with CMOs, where they'll have 10 to 15 prospects at a wine tasting like you're describing, and they have a couple of customers. And the key to that is that allows the customer, if they're so inclined, to speak on your behalf. You don't even have to do any selling. You're just getting people together to have wine.
Yep, exactly. And that happened naturally at physical events too, right? You'd be mingling and someone would be like, oh, I need to check out such and such technology, and say, oh, I happen to be a customer. Like, I'm happy to give you, my experience and how I thought through this. And because ultimately these people we're all peers of each other. And we actually fundamentally, we come together by a different bond. It's actually not the technologies we're marketing or selling. It's the fact that we're marketers and sellers, and that we're trying to figure this out for our businesses.
Yeah, I love that. Again, that goes back to the empathy part of this, is that we are all in this together. One of the things that I had mentioned that physical events were particularly good at is sort of helping you get a customer or prospect over the finish line, right?
Yep.
They're deep into the prospect. Did you find that these virtual events could do that as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen a ton of pipeline velocity out of these things. We've seen a lot of, closed won opportunities that are attributed to these. And, one of our strategies has been to make part of the virtual event special for the prospects that are later in stage, whether that's special one-on-one time with our CEO, a branded experience that goes beyond just the virtual event. So like a conference in a box goes out to a certain number of our prospects that our AEs choose, and just up leveling that experience so that they definitely feel special the way that they would at a physical event.
So what is a conference in a box?
So conference in a box it's really the last conference that we did, virtual conference, I should say. It's a branded box, and we allowed every one of our partners to put a little bit of their brand in there. And when you used to walk a show floor, you'd stop by a booth and they might have a little something for you to take away. And we wanted to bring that experience to people so that they could feel like that physical element of going to that event, because it still matters, right? And it creates that brand affinity in such a different way, because it's tactical and a tactile, I should say, and just means something different.
And I seem to recall a couple of CMOs who got this conference in a box, and it was before the event, and it was so substantial that they felt obligated. They had to show up at the conference at least for a little while. Yep. Because the gift was so so substantial.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, when Chris and Braden founded Sendoso, it was, one of those laws of reciprocity, right? And that's case in point.
Yeah, it's just funny that came up, and I had to laugh at that you guilted them into it. And this, so really probably the biggest change in all of this, and sort of ended up coming to your business, is that to make virtual events special, you need something physical to sort of elevate it, because otherwise it's just a Zoom call. I mean, really. And so it feels like the business, and you ended up becoming essential because of, as brands look to make their virtual events better, they needed what you guys do.
Yep, for sure. And I think it's part of that. And I think it still goes back to the old fundamentals, right? It's content, and then more content. The virtual content has to be really good. And I think marketers need to understand that some people are going to consume it live, but it also has a really great afterlife. And I'm thinking day of, but I'm also thinking shelf life as well, and making sure that it's just meaningful content that helps people.
So what would you say, what's your marketing mix right now?
Yeah. So it's, as you would imagine, it's actually heavy Sendoso. We're using our own product pretty much in every single team as a main component of our mix, and then heavy SEO, heavy digital, heavy SDR, and then a lot of virtual conferences, a lot of community that's layered on that for like engagement and field.
Right. And we've talked about community a little bit. Well, actually, we haven't. You've mentioned community. Talk a little bit about what you've done over the last year to sort of nurture the community, particularly in the pandemic period.
Yeah, so we have a community called Super Senders, and that's really our top sending companies that really want to be creative, share ideas with each other, and be interactive with our company. I mean, everyone is part of this group, from me to our chief product officer to our CEO. Like, you have access to everyone, and can get responses, and it's a place where they share a ton. And then our advocacy manager does special events just for them pretty regularly. They get a voice at the table as it relates to the roadmap, and it's been great. And obviously, bigger, broader swaths of our community we engage with through different social channels, and then a university that we currently have in beta that's launching in March or
Okay.
April.
You said several things that I just want to pause on. So the Super Senders is essentially acts like a customer advisory board, right? Yep. Okay. And so in that sense, they get a preview of products. And so they're, as you called it, the roadmap. And so that makes them invested, right, in your success, which is cool. You mentioned that you do special events for them specifically. What, can you give an example?
Yeah. So, Leslie, who's our advocacy manager at the holidays, had a comedy show for them. So we hired a comedian, and they got a wine.com card ahead of time, and they all had drinks and listened to comedy together. Is one example. Another example is every year they get an exclusive like Super Sender swag bundle that's pretty valuable, and just a way of saying thank you. But at least every quarter we're doing some sort of special event for them.
Got it. Yeah, those are both of those are great. Boy, I imagine the holiday comedy session was welcome. We could all use a laugh. So, all right, and then we mentioned the university, and by the time this show airs, it should be out there. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what it took to develop this and with the value of this program.
Yeah, so it's been a massive project, right? So we released a university into beta in the last part of last year, and really what it's designed to do is two things. One is help companies get their senders up and running at scale. So typically, if you're buying us and you're a marketer, you might bring on 10 people to start, then another 10, then another 10, then another 10. But what happens when you're a bigger company and there's 1,000, right? So it's a curriculum to actually get these people up and running and sending successfully as part of their day-to-day business. And we continue to expand that. So there's going to be there'll be over 100 courses that you can take depending on what you're looking to learn when we launch this in April. And then the plan will be to build some interactive community elements on top of that.
And is this, do people pay for this?
No, it's free as part of being a Sendoso customer.
Oh, as part of being a customer. Yeah. Very cool. Well, again, that sort of goes back to where this conversation started, which is, what can you do to help your customer? And when the pandemic began, it was like, okay, what do we do with our budget? And hey, we're marketers, we got to figure this out. And as it went on, it became, how do we relieve stress? And how do we make sure that everybody's communicated? And now, as we start to think about post-pandemic, it's a world of opportunity. Okay, I have one last question for you, very specific to your business. And if you could offer CMOs 2 do's and a don't when it comes to sort of putting packages together for their customers or prospects.
Yeah, I'd say do know what your audience is like. So, be thoughtful about what you're putting in that package, and do take the time to do proper segmentation to make sure that you're landing the right thing to the right person.
And what's a don't?
I'd say don't spray and pray. I mean, it kind of goes back to the do.
There you go. Don't spray and pray. All right. Well, Dan, we covered so much ground, but I'm so grateful that you could join us today on the show.
No, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
So, and to the listeners, I would ask, I hope you got a lot out of this show. If you did, hey, do me a favor, write a review on your favorite podcast channel, and or share the show with a friend, because sharing is caring. Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neiser. Hey, that's me. Audio production is by Sam Beck. Show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins, and intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about, quite possibly, the savviest B2B marketing agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.